Welcome back. The panel is here. Matthew Continetti, editor-in-chief of the Washington Free Beacon. Kimberly Atkins, chief Washington correspondent for the Boston Herald. Amy Walter, national editor of the Cook Political Report. And Mark Leibovich, national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine and author of the new book, Big Game, The NFL in Dangerous Times. Welcome all. Let me just get right to it. I think Susan Glasser in The New Yorker put it in a quite interesting way about the John McCain memorial service with the headline, John McCain's funeral was the biggest resistance meeting yet. She writes, McCain's grand funeral. The Obama advisor David Axelrod called it an exercise in civic communion, underscored a fact that is often lost about Washington these days. The city is much more bipartisan in some respects than it has ever been, more united than it may currently seem in its hatred of Donald Trump. Amy Walter.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting you asked the question about this was a sort of a memorial service for an era of politics. That is no longer with us. But I'd also argue that that era left us a long time ago, and that this world that we're in, the tribalism, the polarization, the incentive structure has pulled us to this place before Donald Trump ever came. And that he is exacerbating it, there's no doubt. But the service itself, I think, the call to our better angels, our better selves, stands out because of the contrast with the president. But I just think that whoever was president right now, these issues would still be the driving force, and we're not going to get past it because of the fact that there is no incentive for folks to try to bridge this divide.
Amy Klobuchar admitted that in that question. You know, Mark Leibovich, I'm old enough to remember when George W. Bush was the most divisive president of our lifetimes and when Barack Obama was the most divisive president of our lifetimes. And yet, these two were making a call to arms for a more civil time of politics.
Right. Bill Clinton, too. Don't leave him
I
out.
forgot.
You go back. No, look, I mean, I have to say, Ted Kennedy, his funeral, 8 years ago, whenever it was, there was the same sort of call to unity, bygone era. He worked across the aisle and so forth. So, I mean, I guess not cliche alert there because I think it's real, but it's true. This was deeply personal. There's no question it was deeply personal. There was no president who was, not invited, pointedly not invited to an event like this. And, yes, this environment was created, and Donald Trump might be perpetuating it in some ways. But I also think that this is very Trump-specific. This is, I mean, I think larger words and concepts like unity are important, but this was very Trump-specific.
It was Trump, the president's comportment that has bothered so many people, Matthew. Really, you can't, I guess we should be glad he didn't tweet a negative.
Right.
But that's a low bar.
Certainly the McCain-Trump feud began with comments by Trump, but I think it also became something larger. And there was an ideological component to a lot of the eulogies here, talking about John McCain's ideas. When I looked at that ceremony, I saw John McCain designing the rebuttal to President Trump's inaugural address from a year and a half ago. We went from American carnage to the American idea or promise. We went from very negative speech to a very positive speech. Everything is fine. America doesn't need to be made great again. The truth is that John McCain's America, the America that was represented at the National Cathedral yesterday, doesn't need to be made great again because it's doing fine. So the contrast is with Trump and who Trump represents. For them, America is not doing fine. They like the more negative message.
I'm glad you brought this up, Kimberly. There was part of me that felt like, is this scene in the National Cathedral going to be seen as the last gathering of the bourgeois as the revolutionaries come with their pitchforks? Or is it this call to arms where, whoa, we're going to stabilize America again?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think for some people it'll be both to that extent. But I think it's also important to remember, as much as we're talking about bipartisanism, a bygone era, remember that the fights between John McCain and Barack Obama were tough ones. They were strong. They were on opposite sides of issues. And as soon as any policy came out of the White House, if reporters remember that our inbox were immediately filled with John McCain's office really excoriating everything that Barack Obama did. But yesterday, when he stood up there to speak, he was listed in the program as friend. Friend first, President of the United States later. They had respect for one another. There was partisanism, there were bitter battles, tough battles, but there was not the pettiness that we see today. I think that's what people were addressing yesterday.
I thought there was one moment that stuck out for me. I mean, Barack Obama talked about, yes, they had those battles. We talked privately in the White House from time to time. No one advertised that.
That was first I'd heard that.
First I'd heard that.
But I believe it.
But what was interesting about that is he ended that anecdote with a refrain: "We never doubted that we were on the same team." He said it twice. And when I hear team, I mean, I think that actually gets to loyalty to America, if you ask me. I mean, when I hear team, I think patriotism. I think we both never doubted that we're trying to move this country forward. And to me, that was a very, very poignant.
Now we have a country that we don't believe we're on the same team.
No.
There are two Americas that don't believe that we are on the same team, and you have to choose a side. You're on this team or you're on that team.
And if you're not on the right side of the team, you're unpatriotic. You're un-American.
We're fighting over who gets to define patriotism,
And what
Matthew.
team.
I mean, by the way, that gets to your book later on, but we're having this massive fight over patriotism.
One of the eulogies that struck me was actually Henry Kissinger's. And what he was talking about was how McCain lived by the Warrior's Code. McCain brought in ideas that aren't normally part of the discussion in Washington. Things like courage, nobility, honor, and character. And these are all values that were very important to John McCain's approach to politics, and it's one reason why he was able to create relationships across the aisle. These are values that I think are been diminished, and I think they come from John McCain's experience in the U.S. military.
This week, besides being about John McCain, there were days I want to put up the president's Thursday tweet storm, because that was the one where you were just like, is this just more of the same from him, or is there something big? Literally, it was a rat-a-tat-tat, almost a tweet gun he issued. Rigged Russia witch hunt. Lester Holt got caught fudging my tape on Russia. Fake books. Enemy of the people. So much fake reporting and fake news. Collusion. And everybody's like, is he acting rattled? And there's always part of me, Amy, that says, yeah, something's new.
Or that it's just...
The walls are always closing in, or it's Trump.
That's right.
What is
and it's about keeping that energy up all the time of people who are on his team to say, never, ever take your eye off the ball, because the second that you do, they're going to come and get us, and you got to keep this energy as part of it. But I do think that this is what the remarkable piece of this entire campaign is. You had Senator Sullivan there saying, but remember, the economy's doing great, everybody's happy, we should be doing really well this election season. There was not one tweet in there about how great the economy was doing.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.